So yes, down here in downtown Denver at the Esquire Theater, I did go see a documentary film tonight called All Light Everywhere. The trailer looked intriguing, so I came on down to see it. There was about 6 people in the theater, no masks. It's great. And we got new seating in here too, so it's even better. The movie itself was long. It could have been cut by 20 minutes easily. It's an hour and 45 minutes long. Well-intentioned film. The concept of it basically is about the visual world, how we see things, and how we're using surveillance and cameras today to see the world, and how that's changing our perspective greatly, because the camera sees things the eyes don't see, and it records them perfectly, whereas the eye is fallible. So in this film, they begin with the idea that we have the optic nerve located in our eye that connects to the brain, but there's no visual images carried along the optic nerve. The optic nerve is actually at the fovea, or the blind spot, where we don't see anything. But that little tiny bit that we don't see in the world, we don't notice it because we see so much else with our peripheral vision, and we only really focus on a very small part of what we see when we look out at the world. The little part right in the middle, dead center, what we focus on, the rest of it's all blurry. You know, you think it's focused, but it's not. It's blurry. So it's an interesting film. Now they go into the idea about how we're using virtual reality today. And they have people hooked up to these little electrode type devices, little things like this on their head, and they're sitting there just staring into space blindly. But I guess they're seeing something. This is connecting to their optic nerve somehow through their brain center, and they're seeing things. Later they recount seeing a movie. They have no lenses or anything over their eyes covering it up, and their eyes are not closed. They're sitting there with the eyes open but with a blank stare, and they're witnessing something. So then we go into a part of the movie. I think it's a little disjointed. It's all over the place. They try to cover too many things, and they don't do a good enough job on any of them, really, although the Axon story is interesting. In Scottsdale, Arizona, Axon, A-X-O-N, is a security company that makes tasers. It used to be called Taser something. And started in 1991, and they make 85% of all the tasers and body cams that the police use around the country. So they do a good bit talking through the factory, showing you how they make these body cams, how they're used. They have a class demonstrating how to use them, and the guy promoting the company is very, very upbeat. He's very positive about his company and how great it is, and the fact that they can record things today just so well. They're #1 in the world in this sort of thing, in tasers too. A very specific kind of a non-lethal weapon that the police often use, and I assume private people can buy tasers too. As far as I know, you can. But anyway, then the film sort of sidetracks, goes to Baltimore, and they start talking about this drone program that had 8 drones sitting above Baltimore, recording the city 1 second at a time, compiling data about everything that's going on down there on the ground, daytime mostly. I mean, you don't get as much info at night, I presume, but apparently they were doing it around the clock. And anyway, this was done by a private company. And when it was not even known by the mayor of Baltimore. And when it was revealed that this was going on, they put an end to it. There was a lot of controversy about the privacy, the consent of people to be allowed to be filmed. But then, as the woman in the film points out, we're all being surveilled with our phones, our devices, in one way, shape, form, or another right now. And they're arguing maybe it's better to have that surveillance in the city to catch criminals, because Baltimore's got problems. They illustrate that just with the candid filming of the class. You see how disinterested the people sitting in the class seem to be. These are police officers. They're sitting there like, their eyes are rolling around, they're humming, they're talking to each other, passing notes, getting up, scratching their butts. They don't look at all interested in what the guy's presenting, and it wasn't a bad presentation. The guy was very lucid, and he was presenting, I thought, information that I was interested in, but they didn't seem to be. So it showed kind of a sad state of affairs. And then they go even deeper in Baltimore to like a city council, group of concerned citizens type thing, and they're against this drone thing, this surveillance thing. And so they spend way too much time on that, just showing a bunch of people. I'm sorry, they were all African Americans, and they were well spoken, most of them. I mean, I really felt their hearts and their concerns, but they just spent too much time on them squabbling back and forth, and a lot of it I could not understand. And they had no subtitles. They did have subtitles in the movie at odd times. It was the director putting his own little parentheses caption at the bottom to express his thoughts about different scenes. And I found that sort of off-putting. I didn't like that. I wish they just had subtitles throughout the movie, you know, frankly. But that was just a little distracting. And overall, he tried to be a little too cutesy and artsy, I think, with some of the images, and some of the transitions were too slow and muddled, and he repeated himself a lot of times with images. He got into some historical things that were interesting, talking about, I think, one of the relatives of Charles Darwin, who had a lot to do with early photography. And so there's some good historical references there about photography and its infancy and how it came about, kind of derived from the Gatling gun. You know, movie photography I'm talking about here specifically, film photography. And then I think one of the pitfalls here also that the director had, he wrote, directed, and edited this film. I think he should have gotten help with the editing. I think with a better editor, he could have come out with a lot better movie. The very end of the film, he lops on like what appears to be deleted scenes, an extra 5 or 10 minutes of a whole part of the film that he wanted to explore, student filmmakers making their own little movies, which probably would have been interesting. These are mostly African Americans, again, in Baltimore, I presume, where he'd been filming. And that looked like that would have been a good part of the film. And he said it was a big chunk of the film, and they chopped it all out. And they went heavy on this surveillance thing and the Axon. And I just thought, hey, the film was not really balanced that well, and it wasn't that cohesive or coherent. It was well-intentioned, though. I appreciate what he was trying to get out, I thought, anyway, the message that we are being surveilled, and these companies, the police officers, you know, they have a job to do, so they have this equipment, but how they use it sometimes is, you know, a little bit controversial and suspect as to what the intentions are. And sometimes it's used actually not with the best, purposes in mind, because the cameras are designed to see what the eye sees. Even though the camera could pick up more information, they could make these cameras more sensitive to see if a person's holding a gun or something else, a different kind of weapon, or maybe a phone, not even a gun. You could see that, but they will not let the cameras do that. They restrict the cameras to see exactly what the human eye can see. And he says that's because when the evidence comes out and they show the video footage, and all the footage is stockpiled. It's all downloaded by servers, so all of it's available. But then, you're recording at times, you make an actual recording on these body cams. So nevertheless, the point being that the film, it's indicating that today we've got to be more and more aware about the surveillance that is going on and the tools that are being used. And I guess as the saying goes, if you're not doing anything wrong, you got nothing to be afraid of. That may be the case, but oftentimes innocent people are still charged with crimes and put away, and that is still going on today in 2021. And they illustrate that a lot about the ambiguity of how people are recognized facially. And so it's an interesting film. I can't give it a strong thumbs up. I'm just going to say, if you happen to see it around, you might want to watch it. You might want to skip those parts toward the end. It gets a little slow, but I really like the music by Dan Deacon. It was fabulous. And that morphing sequence at the very end of the film where they show the faces morphing one into another, I love that. I love that so much. Godley and Cream has one of the best videos of that kind of thing ever, called Cry. Check out that if you're watching YouTube or Vimeo or something else. Godley and Cream, Cry. The film, like I say, can't really give it a big recommendation, but it was a good night out just to get back to the movies. Blessings all. Namaste.